Now I'm realizing you didn't hear any of that. My microphone was off. What's the deal with my microphone always being off? Well, I was talking about how my whole system collapsed. I had an entire system-wide collapse minutes before the stream was supposed to start. DaVinci Resolve has lost all permissions and seems to have overwritten
Yo. So, hey, can you hear this one? This is actually a different mic. You can hear this? Yeah, looks good. Yeah, this continues to be prove very difficult to keep this stream going. Aside from just regular everyday life complications, just the system itself just seems to every day have some new sort of mind-boggling problem, and yeah, this is kind of amazing. I don't know, all the projects just seem to be gone from at least the setup the way I was using it the last couple streams. Obviously had some huge audio problems last time, so yeah, just constantly trying to think of new ways that I could set this up so it's not just insanely broken all the time. Right, because that's the local database, and it is definitely not in there. Right, and here it is. I get this. I guess I've been trying to link the databases, and that was a bad idea. Because yeah, I don't know. It looks like it all got overwritten, the whole database. So all of that sort of, all the graphics and that kind of stuff, it seems to be just gone. So I think we're just gonna quit out of Resolve for now and get into just some basic headlines, and just try to keep it moving through. The big news, obviously, today is going to be, this continuing battle between Pelosi and Trump. It just never seems to have any sort of movement. I mean, I guess it depends on the time scales that you're looking at. This is now relatively new. This whole Pelosi Trump thing. Not even since the midterm. It was a lot more recent. Right, and so it's crazy to see how thick of a peak it's at now, right? Because it seems like this whole the whole politics of the whole country has turned into this shouting match between Trump and Pelosi, and it's, they're obviously not the ones calling the shots or doing any sort of the real dealing. I mean, if you look into any sort of above the surface layer of politics, you'll know that it's a lot more complicated than that, and there's a lot of deals to be made and contracts to be written and hands to be shook. It's never just these people that they're putting out there, right? And I'm sure you have a busy life too, right? I mean, life is busy, life is complex, and it's hard to get all the stuff done that you're in charge of, right? And so just, I mean, think about it for a second. These actors, I mean, politicians that have to spend, I mean, every single day in front of the camera, right? If you look up Pelosi right now on Google, I mean, you'd have to like see what her press, see what her schedule is actually like. I'm sure you can find that someplace online, right? But just every single day, there's insane amounts of pictures with her, except with Trump. That's going to be a little harder to find. But these people that right there, they're out in the world. They're doing all this stuff, and that's insanely time consuming and also exhausting, right? If you're going to be on your feet and talking to strangers, I mean, I guess it depends on the business you're in, but that's definitely going to take it out of you and going to take up all the day just with travel and that type of thing. You know, you're doing these day gigs basically. Is what I sort of picture it as. You know, but in reality, you're supposed to be getting a bunch of business done and running the country and doing all that kind of stuff. And right, with all the time they spend in front of the camera, it just seems really. It seems like it would be really hard to get anything done whatsoever, right? But yeah, you could scroll through and find insane amounts of articles about this, and I honestly, I've lost the will to really look too much deeper into it, because you know what could this article possibly have to say? You know, and this seems pretty long. Probably just a bunch of quotes, and you know, they're all the same, right? It's like, oh my God, tribulations of the 800,000 federal workers. They're having such a hard time. We should feel super bad for them. Like, man, can't believe we're making all these people suffer, and it's all of Trump's fault. Oh my God. Right, and they call it that even so after the performances by Pelosi and Trump, right? Because that's really what they are. They get out in front of the camera and they're going to do a performance. And you know, if any of you have done any performing, you'll know that you sort of got to prepare ahead of time, because you don't really want to be thinking about what you're saying and doing when you're up in front of the camera, right? That's otherwise you're going to sort of look like an idiot. You're going to just be stammering and not knowing what to say the whole time, you know, depending on the person. I guess some people can get up in front of cameras and talk for a long time, but without actually saying anything, right? That's definitely going to be the hard thing to do up in front of the public is to have coherent thoughts and you know, get them out quickly, and that's basically what politicians do all the time. That's their main job, is to get thoughts out there and progress through them. So you know, I think you have to take a step back and really look at like what do these people do all day, like, right? She's signing this book. Did she actually really like read through all this stuff? I mean, this is I guess the temporary shutdown ender. But that seems to be all, you know, the main things that I've seen floating around. Let's just ask. Who did I like to ask? See, I'm all discombobulated. I lost my thing. We can still click around here, and I can show you the time lapse that I put together. Right, just more caving about the wall, and there's that word again, right? This is 2 days ago, and it's still right. It's because I put Trump caved. Excuse me. And that's what I had sort of a revelation today. I was watching. Well, you know, the details aren't exactly important, but right, there was a person who was actually mentally handicapped, so you know, they obviously don't have like a full grasp on the world. You know, I'm not saying that any of us fully faculty people have a full grasp on the world, but you know, depending on the handicap, you can pretty obviously tell, you know, the parts of reality that they're missing out on. You know, certain social cues, obviously, but you know, that's definitely the bulk of it. They won't be adapting to certain social cues. But another thing is that, you know, they're definitely less shy about showing, I don't know, beliefs and ideas, basically. So just the idea of you being able to influence anything, or you know, or these people, really, these big politicians, because anytime, I mean, you got to think about yourself, and you got to think about, you know, the people way out there at the cream of the crop on the top, right? What are they thinking about, and how do they actually get stuff done, and what kind of power do they have actually in the end, you know, at the end of the day? Because right, the example is basically this handicapped person was thinking they had control over the music when they really didn't, obviously. because just by waving your arms around doesn't mean you're going to control the music, even though that's what's sometimes happens when the person is actually in charge and you're paying attention to them, then they can have an influence. But conversely, even though this handicapped person didn't think they really had an influence, they ended up actually having one, because just by the nature of waving your arms around, you draw the eye's attention, and then you do end up actually affecting the music, right? And so it's I hope it's coming across. It's sort of a complex example, but right, if it's that sort of root question of when you wave your arms, when you say something, when you close a business or fix the stock market, like, yeah, how much power do you think you have versus how much power are you actually having, versus like what are the unintended consequences of your actions, right? You think you're exerting power in a certain direction, or just towards a certain individual or a certain entity, but maybe that energy is having residual effects, right? Because that's what was going on in that situation, and I figured it was a pretty clear sort of telling of what's how the world actually works, right? Because that's the whole as above so below thing, right? You can really extrapolate from very simple, like, human interactions, or even just news stories. This just caught my eye because there's a cave to Trump, right? It's interesting to see these words come back, and especially when they choose talking points. What's the nature of that word cave? To cave in, right? That's what we're thinking. But it's also just the idea of a cave, something hidden, something underground. All that imagery sort of, right? It gets dusted up, and that sort of ties into this whole example of right. Even though you don't talk about a specific thing, or maybe use a specific word over and over again in a certain sense, and there's definitely going to be, initial effects, the primary effects, but there's got to be secondary and so on, and it's going to be really hard to track those changes and effects. But at the same time, I think if somebody out there really is a true master of words and symbols, they're going to know how these things work, and especially how they propagate in the culture, and are also going to know just how to steer them and use the innate power that's in some of these words, right? And the double and triple meanings that these words have, especially in English, right? There's a lot of just double, triple, quadruple meanings. So I wanted to get into these time lapses. Right, it's gonna be election nonsense from here on in. That's sort of what we got going on. So this was I was taking a drive, but it's always I like these time lapses when you're driving to sort of see, just take a scan of the sky, because you can get a full 360 view, basically of the sky, and this is very similar to yesterday. It was sort of dry and cold, and you see it. It's just it's again sort of that hazy layer that comes in like very right angles. Like, right, look at this. This is can you see that? I have to open this box a little bit. Oh, just small in it. Come on. I wanted you to see, right? Yeah, look at this straight angle that's happening right there. And that's all across, the whole valley, basically. Look at that big flat straight angle that's happening there, and just seeing a lot of sort of digital things happening in the sky. Look at that. Would you just look at it? Wish I could get that stop bar out of there. Can you not do that, Windows? See, that's why I was using Resolve, because it if you're just using your straight up computer, it does annoying stuff, and it feels like you're just on the computer. So we'll get that going again soon enough. Yeah, but check that out. I mean, this is again just sort of your typical LA skies, right? These layered sort of shelves. Oh, and this was a really sad story, and I was hoping this would be in the shot, right? You often see homeless people uh, here in LA, and this panhandling and the like, and right, this guy was just begging for money on the side of one of these off ramps, and yeah, right. The cops come over, and he doesn't even. He sort of like, I guess he stops, but he's like very half-heartedly honks his horn. The cop and is like, "Bro, you can't do that. You can't panhandle there. You got to go someplace else." And he's like, "What? But I'm just standing here." And then he doesn't even really have that much money, and obviously seems like he's on drugs or have some other issue because I noticed he actually left like 50 cents or more just in change on his spot. He obviously freaked out about the cop. But this cop, he just sort of drives by, honks his horn. He's like, "Bro, you gotta stop panhandling. You gotta stop." And then they both just walk in the opposite direction, and no problem was solved from this interaction. And it was just sort of insane to watch. And again, I see these little interactions out in the world as symbols of just the grander state of things here in America and abroad and everywhere, right? Because just that's that story right there of the cop seeing a homeless man, somebody in trouble, somebody needs help, and them just sort of honking at him, telling him to get stop bothering the richer humans. Right? Is that really the police protocol when you see a homeless guy? And also just like, I don't know, just so dehumanizing and rough. Right? And then he just made his merry way. But again, just right. It's hard to put your finger on here in LA, but you can see it. It's right. See, there's a better picture. There's looking into the sun, and it's interesting. There's not a lot of right, and this I hear this a lot from people online that talk about spraying, and they'll notice that around the actual sun, around the sun itself, there'll be a lot of spraying, or around the event. There was definitely a lot of spraying going on for the eclipse and beforehand, and that's one of the major premises. What are they actually? Are they masking something that's going on in front of these major celestial bodies? Because yeah, why would you spray? But my retort to that is always right. Like, how are you going to protect it from everybody? Because everybody has sort of a different vantage point. I guess it all sort of perspectives towards the middle at some point, but right, still not every cloud is going to block vision of the sun or the moon for everybody in the country at any given time. So, still trying to get to the bottom of that. But you can tell just in this picture that it's entirely made up of trails, right? Just you can see this shape right here. It's definitely trails, and just the way it's these fingers sort of spread out. And then the darker color that you sort of see way up at the top there. Because it really does seem to affect the actual color of the sky. Depending on the condensation that's happening. I mean, that's obvious, right? It's going to change refraction levels through the moisture. But, right, as with the homeless guy, as with the mentally handicapped guy, there's always layers to all this stuff, and it's never, and one thing is never just one thing, and I think that's that tries to happen a lot here in the conspiracy community. They try to make one thing or just have a simple thesis because you need that basically to get through a clear and coherent argument, but and this is just a night lapse. I don't know if you've never driven around, the valley at night, then you can see what that looks like. If you're tuning in from China or Cambodia or something, then you can you can wonder at the marvel of traffic here in the valley in Los Angeles in the night, and my amazingly dirty windshield. That's also a fascinating element here. I had another one. I wanted to see if I could get the night lapse, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. because we are heading towards the next section, I would say. I wanted to show a couple examples um, of this. Just let me see if I can find it first before I start to hype it. Right, because I I think that's why I'm trying to stick with this idea of covering complex, different topics where you go after the news, you go after what's going on in the research community, and also what's going on in pop culture, right? Because most channels out there, you'll see basically, they're either one or the other, they're sort of the chemtrail guys, and then there's the conspiracy guys, and then the mud flood guys, and all these different things, and there is that is important, and I understand that you got to focus and really try to get to the bottom of the research. But this happens in science as well. When you're doing stuff like that, it gets hard to, what am I trying to say? Connect the dots in a seriously broad fashion. Maybe you can connect the dots in your own field, and possibly there's obviously tons of insanely good researchers that are finding all the connections to everything. But on the other hand, right, there's connections in the news between entertainment. I'm trying to draw connections that are between what's going on in the news and what actual content are they putting on that night, and how does that content that you're looking at relate to the news that you're watching? And sometimes it's just insanely obvious, like it's offensively obvious. And that's sort of the ones that I'm going to start to pull out and highlight a little bit.
That's for my sister. Get him up. If he ends up in the hospital, then he's going to end up in a van headed straight to the border. Ain't he? Are you okay, Mr. Ortega? I think so. I'll be back.
All right, so let's just break that one down real quick. We can sort of scroll through it, and so this is Roswell. It's I talked about it before, because they're obviously doing the whole alien conspiracy culture thing, and there's a whole character in here where they throw the entire conspiracy culture under the bus, basically, and make us all look like raving lunatics, which is just another classic old technique that still works insanely well. But I want to focus on this scene here, because a big part of the show is the story of immigration and illegal immigration, and sort of racial border tensions that are simmering, right? And this is just front and center here in the news these days. I don't think anybody would deny you on that. The border and the wall, and that's just like burning into everybody's minds, right? And this is sort of this idea of like, right, during the day, people, in the morning you read the news, you fill your brain with facts and what's going on and just different things that are happening in the world. You go to work and do other stuff, but when you're tired, when you're done, when you're ready to go to sleep, then you turn on the TV. That's just how that works, right? That's a pattern that I'd say, obviously not all, but insane amounts of people do. They're going to turn on the TV when they're tired, and they're at the end of their day, and they're trying to, sort of process just things that they've been through. And obviously that's where you are your ideological weakest at this point. This is the prime time to get inside your head and really change your mind or convince you of things. And so there's, I was hoping to find another.
They picked you two, and they left me behind. That was decided.
Yeah, that's just more like abandonment issue stuff. I really think this clip says it all. But I will pull up some other ones just to sort of prove my point. I just have to dig through them next time, right? But yeah, immigration and the whole thing's huge deal in the show already, and there's already like a MAGA wearing America shirt guy that is portrayed as just just the very typical, the kind of things that you would see on MSNBC or CNN, and the Trump hate, the Trump loving American red-blooded white guy that hates those damn immigrants and just wants the wall to happen so they can all go home because they're just raping and murdering everybody. And that's why, I really got to pull these other clips because all throughout the show, they'll be talking about aliens, and then there's a love triangle, and then bam, it'll switch to, man, but don't you feel bad for those illegal immigrants? Like, isn't that just a terrible situation? And I'll be like, yeah, you're right, or showing you the opposite, and that's sort of what it is. And that's why I think this all just really connects back together, because that's, what are we talking about observing and doing here in human society? It's really just sending these thoughts and ideas out, and then having that affect other humans, to a greater or lesser degree, and then watching those effects sort of propagate, and then riding the wave, basically, if you can really get a good foothold. And obviously, if you are a major media company and have the eyeballs and the pockets of so many people, then that's a really good position to be in. If you're if you want to get, if the point of the game is to get your consciousness out into other people's consciousness, because that's basically what it is. Well, all this stuff is entertainment, politics, to a sense, the weather and all that kind of stuff. It's like, how can this message get into your head and affect you, and then affect your actions down the road, or your thinking, your critical thinking down the road? Because that's just definitely a core principle of predictive programming. You got to get out in front of things, because people have to cogitate on this stuff, right? It takes time for people to really settle their views about things, depending on the issue, obviously. But right, if you were on the fence about immigration and that whole thing, and you were seriously loving the show without any sort of, right, I'm coming from a little different place, because it's, I don't know, I've watched so much TV, I've become immune to the effects, to it, again, to a certain degree. But if you're just watching the show and you think this guy is super hot, he's very broody, he's obviously like the main character, and then we see him running across the street, right? And the whole story here is that the guy, a MAGA hat, America guy, is his sister was killed by an illegal immigrant, and that's just yet another, like, that's a classic Trump story. We were just hearing that in the news recently. He was rattling off the list of different people that have been abused and killed by immigrants, which there are, that definitely exists. And that's the major talking point and plot point for these racist rednecks, which are, again, portrayed pretty stereotypically. He's got the hunting hat, and then here's chain guy with the way too long hair and the cowboy hat. It's all very, some TV's come a long way in its symbolism, and other things are just, I don't want to say lazy, because that's just sort of how it is. That's how you get these ideas across, in the quickest, most efficient manner for a very broad range of, intelligence levels, basically. Right. So this is the Mexican guy. He runs the local diner, and everybody loves him, and he's your favorite local Mexican guy. But you find out that he's an illegal immigrant, and that they're worried about him getting deported, and that the cops are going to sneak around, and they're snooping around, but he's friends with everybody, and the town is very close, right? But people also know that he's an illegal immigrant, because it is a close, small town. So basically, right, and this is the classic false argument that you're supposed to be thinking, right? How could this guy possibly be placing scapegoating this guy for what happened to his sister, because that was a different immigrant, that was a totally different person. This is obviously a sweet local guy. So how could he possibly have anything to do with it? But they're gonna beat him and kill him in the street, almost, or beat him within, and ask him to leave the city. Is that, none of this makes any sense. And I guess people behave like that, but it almost, right. This just seems like it's like the TV version of the MAGA people that you see on TV. And so that, because there has to be this continuity between, the personalities and type of people that they're trying to get you to believe are all over the place and everywhere. And then if they also put that in the fiction, if they put that in the TV shows, then it's, that's just going to cement the idea even further. They're like, damn, this whole country is just full of these dirty rednecks that want to kill Mexicans. I can't believe that they would be that cruel. And right, even if it's a very small percentage, both of these, communities, it's going to push fear, basically, because fear is always going to be the main root of all of these things. So fear is going to be first. You're going to retreat sort of back in your heart. You're going to be scared of both of these things. Like, I don't want to get raped by a Mexican, but I also don't want to get in front of some crazy, political, this type of person. So I'm just going to retreat back in my hole and think even less about going outside. I would say would be the end effect for a bunch of people.
If he ends up in the hospital, then he's gonna end up in a van headed straight to the border. Ain't
And then he gets beat. This is not a very good action sequence, but can we just hear that line again? No, that was him getting beat.
Ain't and headed straight to the border. If he ends up in the hospital, then he's gonna end up in a van headed straight to the border. Ain't.
Right, so his plan is to beat the shit out of him enough so that he goes to the hospital, and then they realize he's undocumented, and they'll send him away. Right, but don't you feel bad for this guy? Don't you feel bad? He's just a hardworking guy, and he's trying to make his way, right? And I'm not saying, regardless of what you think about the immigration issue or what the actual facts are, I think it's important to look here and appreciate what they're trying to get you to feel about this situation, because there's a very obvious, sort of push here to get you to feel something. And I would just, get your ears up every time somebody's trying to make you feel anything, because that's usually a false argument or some sort of, there's some sort of agenda behind it. So, keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. Show is over. I got to get back to some other stuff, but I was hoping to get some outro music. But I don't know if it's gonna happen. Where's my folder? What if I just played this WAV file? Give me spinning ball. This is, it's, I don't know. Technology. Alright, there it is. It's been real, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. See what happens then.
True. That was some fake truth. I think I should be more clear, or maybe give an explanation. I think fake has so much connotations and stigma now, associated with fake news. And that's not really what I mean. I'm not talking about fake news. I guess sometimes I'm talking about fake news, but that's not really what I mean. The idea is to blend your thoughts a little. Just blend them between the different areas of your life and realize when they tell you it's fact, there's a chance that it's fiction. If they tell you it's fiction, there's a chance that it's fact, and vice versa. That's all I'm trying to say. Like if you look at stuff that says it's fake, there could be some truth in it. That's what I call the fake truth. That's what I call the fake truth.